whenever you're in survival, it's a core default, which is part of the core series. You're either this or that. So Melora is one of my favorite people, absolutely, and we're like family at this point, and our families are melded, and I'm working with most all of Melora's family, her beautiful 21-year-old and 17-year-old, right?
17, yeah.
And Gildert, her husband. So. And that's really what a life coach does, right? It includes someone's life, all aspects of their life, right? And we've really...
And all of my best friends.
And all of her best friends.
Have come and gone.
Yeah.
Some have stayed.
Right. Yes,
some have left.
That's right.
Some have stormed out.
That's right. We've had everything, which is appropriate, right? Yeah. It's the nature of, coming and going. And that's the nature of people will come and go in your life, right? And Melora has been insane in terms of sharing and standing for all the work. Right. And a lot of people will get very possessive about this and going, I'm not sharing him. Right. I don't want him to I need him when I need him. Right. He can't be working with me. But Melora has been incredibly generous in her sharing me and the work and how it's been and how it's impacted her life. So Melora is a very, well-known actress and a director and a mother and a wife and a great friend and a force of nature, right? And beautiful. And, she's pretty much got all these elements. There's this wonderful thing that's, it's a male quote because it's from The Tempest with when they talk about Prospero. And they say that this is Shakespeare's was his last play that he wrote, and it was a culmination of everything that he had gleaned, and he infused that in this character Prospero. And Prospero was able to absolutely move the elements around and make things happen, on this island and reconcile education and redemption and everything else. And so there's this quote that says that the elements were so well mixed in him that one might say this is a man, right? The embodiment of it. And I can say the same thing for Melora. This is a woman. Like all these elements are so well mixed in her, like all these different qualities and characteristics that she embodies, right? I mentioned, mother, wife, actress, director, friend, creative force, right? All that. And we've worked together, all the time. As I said, it's more of a partnership at this point in a collaboration on what's needed, and it's very kinesthetic as opposed to cognitive. It's got a texture to it and an understanding of it, like what's ever needed, what's required, it comes together. And I always think like, well, 1 and 1, as I said, like make 1,000, right? You take me out of the equation and it's not working, and you take Melora out of the equation, it doesn't working. It requires all those two components for something magical to happen. So that's Melora in a nutshell, well, right?
I like that.
Yeah.
I can go now.
Yeah.
I know.
Exactly.
I just want to have a show myself. I get acknowledged, right? It's like, oh my God, I am a beautiful person.
Exactly.
And so, as I said, there's so many different aspects that that we work together in.
Yeah, true.
And I'm just glad you're here and want to give us a chance to kind of talk about what you feel from your experience, and then we can even talk about things. If you had something like, hey, I want to talk about this, I want some coaching or advice on this, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes that might come up, right? Because that happens when it's like I'm struggling with something that's going on. And so if that comes up, we talk about it. If not, we don't, right? It means I get to rest. Can I take a break, which is always good, right? From talking people to death, which is a horrible death. But I've done it. I've killed many people talking them to death, right? So
yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you for that acknowledgement. That was very sweet.
You're welcome, honey.
I am constantly acknowledging you, I think, to everybody. I'm probably should be getting a piece of the money that you make because I have brought so many
it's true
clients your way.
I think you're, without a doubt, you're like it.
I basically am like, I'm the billboard.
Yeah, you are.
For Breck Costin.
There is no question you shared more than and gotten people here and, touched much to their, dismay sometimes and much to like their, appreciation.
Well, I think that you say though, I will say, when something's broken, you don't want to go to, or when your head's up your ass about something, which is one of the ways you describe, when your survival is up and running and kind of running the show, you tend to say, don't go talk to someone whose head is up their ass about that same thing. And I think that that's really why I promote what you do so much, is because a lot of people say to me, wow, like they see me doing the work and they go, oh, that's so amazing. And I share that with the people I love in my life. I think I'm quite private really, but the people I love in my life, I share everything and I'm very like open, and I sort of tell them about, there was this thing in some, I don't know, some creative career thing that I was all messed up about, and I just did this and this is what I did, and I learned this from Breck, and then they'll go like, oh, I want some of that. I want some of that. And then I say, well, and I'm also constantly, when I'm talking about what I've done or how I've gotten through a particular challenge, I'm always saying, well, because Breck says, and then this is another thing Breck says that just blows me away. And so everybody's hearing your name all the time and they're like, who is this Breck person? Yeah. And they're either like, oh my God, she's in a weird cult, right? And we need to get her out of it. Yeah. But then they see that the fruits of my labor.
Yes.
I guess. Or our labor, I should say.
I told someone, I shared this before. I said when someone accused this, when I was doing much bigger seminars, when they accused me of like leading a cult, as a cult leader.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
And I said, let me show you how this is in a cult. And they go, because they said, and they did it publicly. Mm-hmm. And they said, how? I go, get out. They said, what? I said, get out. I'm kicking you out. See, this isn't a cult. Cults are trying to keep you in. I'm trying to get rid of you. So.
No, I'm one of those people who, I go into a boutique with a girlfriend and we both see the same beautiful cashmere sweater at the same moment.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, you saw it first, so you can get it. And I'm like, no, let's both get it.
Yeah.
That's just who I am.
Yes.
I want us both to have the things that we want. And I want all the people in my life to have an extraordinary life. And one of my favorite things about you was when I had my first session with you, you said, I believe everybody can have an extraordinary life. And if you take the coaching, your life changes and gets better. And if you don't take the coaching, nothing changes.
Yeah.
And that's like very simple to me and makes a lot of sense. And I'm good at taking direction, and you just were giving me good direction.
Yeah.
And there were times when I'd say like, that's not resonating with me, and we'd work that through and figure out why. And maybe sometimes you'd go like, you'd shift and you'd go, oh, you know what? I think you're right. It is a little more like this. I thought it was that, but I think now that you're saying that, I think that's right. So we are in collaboration.
Yeah.
That's a great way of describing it. I don't feel like I go to you and you tell me what to do. And I sometimes you do. Sometimes you'll say, just do this. And I'll be like, I'm terrified to do that. And you'll say, no, just do it. And then I remember the first time I did that. I remember the first time you gave me that coaching was just do this. And I remember just being crazed, which was just I had been told I was on The Office. I was on a very successful show, and it was like the second season, and it was getting more and more successful. It's more successful now than
I know. It's crazy. Yeah, it's true.
But at that time, I think a lot of people had been saying to me, like, you know what, you're just this is going to be great. You should really think about changing representation. I think you should, and I remember being like, okay. And then a lot of these people that don't know what actors and their relationships with agents is, it's a very odd experience. And most actors feel like their agents are the bosses, but you kind of made it clear to me that like, no, actually they are your employees.
Yeah.
And so you need to go and talk to your employees. Cause I was thinking, people are telling me I should fire my agent and I should move on to some big, place, and I'd already been to a big agency and I didn't have a great experience there. And I was now in a smaller agency that I was liking, and he's like, he's Breck. Breck.
Yeah.
So that's how I talk about you all the time.
Yeah,
that's
right.
how I talk about you.
Third person is always good.
I'm always saying,
I'm not really here anyway.
So he says, no, so you told me you need to go and have a meeting with your agent, and you need, which one over there are you, connected with? So I did. And we sat down, and the whole way over, I was talking on my cell phone to my husband, and he said I was basically fighting with him the whole way there.
Right.
Just like, I don't know what to say. I don't have anything to say. No, that is not what I need to say. I was just so angry and anxious. I was just so anxious that it was coming out as anger. And I get there and we sit down and we start having this lunch, and I'm like, so I'm going there to fire her, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
And she says, and I say, well, people are suggesting that I need to move on to another agency, and I'm thinking about doing that. And she says, really? Okay, well, what is it you want in an agent? And I said, well, my fantasy has always been, I heard that Clark Gable would go and have, drinks and cigars with his agent every, Friday. And I just love the concept of that, this idea of having a relationship with somebody that really knows you and really understands your dreams and your visions and really wants to help you get those things because they're invested in you, not just your work and the money that they make, but you. And she goes, yeah, that's very interesting. She goes, that's why I left the big agencies and why I'm in a small agency, because I wanted to have that relationship with my clients. And she said, and the other thing that's really interesting about you, Melora, is that, you say that you want to move on, but, half the time I call you and you don't call me back. And I was like, oh,
what?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was doing this.
Yeah.
I was like, stay and come and stop. It's just stop, but more, not enough and too much, not enough and too much, which happens to be a headline over my survival system.
Yeah.
So I was doing that actively. And she said, and I thought, oh my God, she's right. I don't call her back for days and sometimes weeks, who knows? And, so that was a big moment.
And that's not you at all.
And that's not me at all. No. It's really not who I am. I mean,
even though in the entertainment industry, people think that's some sort of power move. Right. Where I don't, if I don't call you back, I've got some sort of leverage or power, which is ridiculous kind of affect.
Yeah.
Right. Aberrant affect. But that's not you at all. It would obviously come out of some sort of fear, some sort of anxiety that no one wants to hear from me. Or something, that would be, as opposed to how it could be interpreted by the agent as, oh, this is arrogance and it's like everyone else in this town, when in fact that's not the case.
Or she's not that interested.
Or something like that, yes.
In growing her career, growing her vision, and our relationship and all those things. Anyway, so what came of that lunch was I went there to fire her. Ultimately, I left that lunch saying that we're going to get I'm going to get a manager, I'm going to get a publicist, I'm going to get a lawyer. We're going to expand my team rather than shrink it and change it and shift it.
Yeah.
And I called you on the way back, and I just remember being like, oh my God, Breck, this work is so incredible. I had that moment of what that feels like. And I always tell people this, that it is that when you have that first experience of just like, as you call it, stepping on the gas, of pushing through this horrible challenge that feels so full of fear and anxiety, and you can't do it, and you just do it. And then ultimately on the other side, there's this whole surprise and this release and this feeling of just the whole world becomes, so much larger, and there's so much more possibility and all those things.
And fear is it's obviously fear and shame are the fuel of the survival system, right? But that's that's distorting. Whenever your head's up your ass, you have no perception, and that is impossible. And people think, oh no, this is when I have the most perception. They act like this is where I have the most awareness, the most intuition, the most intelligence. I said, yeah, if you're describing your colon, right? But you have no perception. Stop subscribing to a phenomena that is actually just the opposite of intuition, perception, any kind of prescient ability. I remember with my older brother, he was 7 years older than me, right? And he was an All-American lacrosse player, captain of the University of Pennsylvania lacrosse team, right? And in amazing shape, right? Yeah. Obviously. And so, and I'm 7 years younger. So at 14, he's 21, right? and he would come and beat the shit out of me, right? And he didn't know how strong he was. And I'm like, I'm going to die. And no one's like, is there anyone around knowing that he's got his knee on my neck and he's putting me out and he's just dense to that he's going to kill me, right? And so, and no one's, and there's no social worker or parenting around, right? So I remember that we had this moment, right? Now he had gotten into a major car accident and he was now, weakened much more. Now he's 25 and I'm now 17 or 18 and I'm like now into my own, right? And he said something about my wife at the time, right? Something nasty, right? And I said, you've always been an asshole. You're a complete asshole. And now because I was so nervous, right, to say that, I said, that's what you've always been. And he goes, look, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I went, what? You mean that's all I needed to do all along?
Was just say you're an asshole?
Stand up for myself and say something, right? That's all I needed.
Right.
And you would have backed down. I said, that lesson was it. I said, I'm never not going to say what I need to say or speak up for myself or stand up again. Right. It was like, it changed. Yeah. It was a game changer. Yeah. I said, my perception was so distorted.
Well, people tend to go to themselves, right? When they're most afraid, like, and they have biggest, like, I must be the expert. I'm going to, and they go to themselves all the time. Yeah. That's like the first wrong turn, right? It's the first wrong turn.
I know.
Well, and it's also so amazing when, even when we've been working with Breck as long as we have, and you still, you have those moments where, and even you went through this recently, right? Where I'm assuming you must have the same experience where you go, you feel yourself. For me, it's like a dark cloud that comes over. I think everyone has their own feeling experience, but for me, it's like when everything gets dark and everything gets hopeless, I know my head's up my ass. And Breck used to say that to me at the beginning. He used to be like, no, Melora, when you think everything's wrong, your head's up your ass. Like, that's just who you are. And I just didn't, for the longest time, it took the longest time to get this idea of you just don't have perception. And that's why the whole fly up over your life and look down 30,000 feet and look down is so useful, because even when the dark cloud is hanging over and you know your head's up your ass, but you still feel like shit because it's still got you. If you just do that flying up over thing and give yourself the opportunity to have perception, which you can't have if you don't recognize that the cloud has, invaded upon you. So I just think so many of those tools are so useful and continue to be, even for me anyway, just finessing them and getting to where, because there's just going to be times, right, when you just get pinned, even when you've done this work 15 years or whatever I've done it, there's still times when I'm just like, Breck, I'm just up against the wall. But at least now I know it. At least now I know I'm up against the wall.
That's essential. And there's also the evolution of it and the phases of that, where sometimes it is really just like your head's up your ass and you got to get it dislodged. And sometimes it's the next level of evolution, which is more of like an iceberg. And what's beneath it is really where the danger is. And so you've got to do much more work, because it's bringing up an enormous issue that's historical, that's never been, because of certain abilities, certain navigation, that you've been able to avoid it, right? And now you can no longer avoid it, and you're now having to liquefy it. And I always think of that image for myself, that I'm liquefying icebergs so I can cruise, with mobility again, and then you'll get to another iceberg. And that's kind of the nature of it. And it never ends. I mean, I have the most transformation in the last 2 years, in the last year, than I've ever had in my life, and then it comes in packages that you don't expect. It might come in your 18-year-old son. It might come in your most profound losses, or your biggest gains. Like, I get the most concerned when people are like at the height of something, because now they think they've gotten somewhere, right? And that gets really dangerous, right? So, and arrogant, right? So so it's really such an extraordinary journey, to go completely counter to the culture, which is all about being more pinned, more singular, more conclusive, rather than more curious, more open, more surprised, right? It just goes so against age, Because there's this, this entropic nature to life, which means we're in a state of entropy. Like you're going out of the moment you're born, you're going out of existence, right? That's the nature of it. You were going to die. At some point, you're going to die. Things are going to get brittle. Things are going to get, vaporized. All that stuff's happening, right? And to kind of go counter to all that and to open things up as time goes on, right? And intervene in the kind of natural gravitational pull, of life is extraordinary. And that's what I love. You see two identical resumes, same age, same everything. And yet this person has an extraordinary life and this person's on their way to bitter. Right. And they could have identical resumes, and it all has to do with spirit, interpretation.
Well, it also speaks to that idea that you always say about, the quicker and the deeper you can get into relationship with loss, the more joyful your life will be. And I tell people that all the time. Like, I love the idea that we start losing things from the moment we're born. And nobody, and in our culture in particular, there's no relationship with loss. There's no relationship with that. And in fact, we're constantly avoiding it. Yeah, there's constantly.
Yeah, we're hanging on.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I love the whole thing with
promotion to stay young and stay beautiful and stay sexy and stay hot and stay successful.
Or stay rich.
Stay. Yeah. It's like even with the Make America Great Again, I remember us.
I was just going to bring that up.
Like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
We don't want to go backwards.
No, we don't. Right? Yeah. I said, why do we want to go back? We want to go forward.
Yeah. Like, why don't we move?
Yeah.
Why don't we move forward? And I remember you saying that to me when I had a particularly intense breakdown about something. You said, and I remember saying, like, I just want Melora back. And you go, you don't want Melora back. You want Melora forward.
Yeah.
You want to keep going.
Yeah. You want to be curious about who she's going to become.
Right. That's right.
But yeah, it's so funny you were bringing up Make America Great, because I was just thinking of Trump, because he really was using loser so many times in his narrative all the time. And that's the whole thing about loss. Like, it's fascinating. His authority about not wanting anyone to, people, you can't lose, right? Even when he talked about, was it McCain? I can't remember who it was. So he said, like, he's a prisoner of war, and he lost. He got caught.
Yeah, he got caught.
That's
so,
right.
That's
and
right. When he
now
said that was
it's really a brilliant way of thinking in a certain way, right? Well, he's right in one way, right? He got caught, but in another way.
That book that Michael Wolff? Who wrote that book?
I don't know.
Anyway, he talks about all he really cares about is being a winner.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm saying. So loss is not, and it's gonna, you keep getting hit, even if you can try and avoid, because you can't avoid loss, right? And so, but the whole derivation of loser is like no loss. Calling people losers means that they're lost, as opposed to like, no, without that you don't have any ability to be creative, inventive, transform. You just might as well take your past and stick it in front of you and call it your present, right? Because that's what that is, So it's it's an essential part of the work is one's relationship to loss, which is not an essential part of the American culture for sure.
No,
right? It isn't.
Well, Melora, I think I was listening to you, and it really inspired me. The way you opened and the way that you acknowledged Melora about her sense of giving to people.
Yeah.
And her sense of other people. I can tell just by sitting next to you and the way you talk, you have a really good sense of when someone else has got their head up their ass and when someone else is stuck, right?
Yeah.
Because in every relationship, you're dealing with both sides of the fence. You got your own stuff going on, and you got the person on the other side of the fence trying to figure out their stuff. And, one of the things in this work is as you start to unpack yourself and you start to learn about yourself and where you have those challenges or shortfalls or issues you have to work out, then you, after doing that work and finding yourself and some humanity in that, then you can actually connect to other people. You can actually start to see what's happening on the other side versus just being all about you, right? Because you're talking about Trump and you're talking about the nature of, and sometimes when we have that all about me, I can't lose, it's so...
Well, it's a narcissistic...
It's narcissistic, right?
It's a narcissistic wound.
But it also arrests so many things. It keeps you so stuck in a particular place because you can't go outside yourself, right? You're just stuck in that one narrative.
Well, you can do this in any form, in any vocation. You take tennis, and as you evolve as a tennis player, you first are working on your strokes. Am I hitting this right? I'm hitting this right, hitting this right. Professional tennis players are not working on their strokes. Those strokes are golfers. Those strokes are absolutely in place. They are tracking everything that's happening on the other side of that court and how the person serves, how the person plays. They're playing the chess game that, someone else isn't playing. And that's true with like Tom Brady, how he reads a defense, right? He's like a savant, like calling audibles, like, in the middle of things. Like when you start to get, present and you're freed up, you're tracking, the way the world moves, other things, you're tracking things that other people aren't tracking.
Yeah, and I also think that like you talk often about the difference between a coach and a therapist, right? As a coach is that they're on the court with you. They've had to have as much
a body of experience,
if not more, a body of experience, a heartbreak, and all those things. And I think kind of what you were saying, Brian, like when you do the work yourself, you realize that it's just you have more empathy for everybody else because it's so freaking hard. Even when you are committed to the work, you're in it 100%, you're doing it, you've been doing it for a long time, and you still get, as I said, you still get pinned, you still have moments of just believing the bullshit and not being able to rise above and see it clearly. You have no perspective and all those things. You might have more tools to be able to pick up the phone faster and say, Breck, I gotta come in, or say to your husband or your wife or whatever, like, we need to have a chat, or you know what, leave me alone, I can't talk to you. But it really is an interesting, and I think that is such an interesting thing that you even said about Trump, because, and I think what is so wrong with politics and the country, just as an overall overarching thing, is that people don't have, they are promoting this thing about being so sure and being so right and being so yes and no, black and white, this and that there is no room for the subtleties and the kind of the finessing of what it is to be human, the human experience. I understand that politics is politics, and I get it that like you have to come forward and be like, this is what I am, and there's no room, but I feel like we're really in a stalemate with the country because, and maybe it's all over the world really, because people they're just sort of, they think it just can be business as usual. And I just don't think that, I think that hopefully the world is slowly waking up, and that's so different than being woke, right? But like waking up around the fact that there's so much more subtlety to this than,
well, yeah. Right? I mean,
and
whenever you're in and I know we'll complete here, sweetheart. Whenever you're in survival, it's a core default, which is part of the core series. You're either this or that. It's either black or white.
Right.
There's no
and
colors.
That's what politics looks like.
There's no nuances. Yeah. There's none of that. And by definition, by design, that's what politics is about. By design.
Yeah.
Like you have to. As soon as you're elected, you have to start selling out.
Right.
It's the game.
It's very hard to
because
watch
to maintain a Senate seat, to maintain a Congress seat, you have to constantly compromise.
Yeah.
So it's the design, and that's why you don't see any people, and Trump wasn't a great businessman. He had like 6 bankruptcies, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
Is people who are successful businessmen don't go into politics.
Right.
Because they're constricted, they're handcuffed. They want to manage the lobbyists. They want to leverage politicians because you got no power, you got no influence. Obama's a perfect example of absolutely being handcuffed 100%. Handcuffed and taped up. Right.
But, I think, just through this conversation, we've talked about you discovering yourself, taking the coaching, taking on those concepts of being to operate outside yourself has really helped you connect to other people and connect to your own contribution about how you can do things differently, more powerfully, how you can solve problems more dynamically by exploring things and opening yourself up to other possibilities. And so, I've loved sitting next to you and listening to you talk today with Breck, and it's been great meeting you. And it's been so good to have you on our podcast here. So,
the best, of course, honey, always, right?
Thanks. I love you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just thank you so much. And
of course.
Yeah, thanks for taking your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
To promote Brian.
Yeah. That's the real problem.
Is
I'm the most unpromoted person in the room. You got to be kidding me.
Yes, exactly.
I need to help you.
It's about being inappropriate.
You're floundering so much.
I am. I know.
So I'm here
to it's like a fish out of water.
I got to share.
I could offer.
I got to share a quick story. And Jeff's over there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in the corner. Yeah.
I want to share this. It's heartbreaking what happened. So,
yes.
did I tell you this? Like 2 days ago, Jack's best friend OD'd. He died.
No.
What? Yeah.
What, the one who's is?
No, Ethan is who he went to. So Jack was at Livestrong for a year in Utah. And that's really where our family is. The head of Utah goes down to see Jack like every few days.
Right.
And visit him. You know, he's this 50-year-old man who just loves Jack. And he's the head of the program, you know, called Livestrong, right? Then Jack was not, after a year, he wasn't asked back to Livestrong because of behavior and things he did. But it's family for him. He made great friends. You know, these are his dearest friends. Then he went to Wilderness for 3 months. If you remember, he was out in the wilderness. Mm-hmm. And then he was on the street and on the thing, blah, blah, blah. And so he's now at Balance House, which is in Utah, and he's thriving, right? First time. And anyway, his best friend, Ethan, his closest friend from Livestrong, who he loved and Ethan loved him. He's been at home. He's been doing really well. And he got a job, a filmmaking job, right? And he was excited, but he was nervous about it because he's, you know, an addict and stuff. So he did something and it was laced with fentanyl and he died 2 days ago. And the mom called us. I mean, you know, Jen and I have been bawling about this. And the mom called and said that, you know, how much Ethan loved Jack. And that she was concerned about Jack hearing this news. And Jen was on the phone with Jack for an hour today because he's having a hard time.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's heartbreaking, these kids. And fentanyl is just fucking everywhere. Yeah, and we were just talking about it's not an OD. You don't OD on fentanyl. Your lungs collapse. You don't, your brain tells you to stop breathing and your lungs collapse. It's not an OD. It's so deadly. And I think Tanisha said it's instantaneous. I think someone said that. It's instantaneous.
Yeah, no, it's.
So, you know, we're talking about life, right? And possibility and love and compassion and creativity and different ways of thinking and different ways of moving and the whole mental health issue and all the elections, like, you know, how severe it is.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's so big.
And that's why you're talking about politics. Like, you know, really, I mean, I understand people might have the best of intentions, but they're selling out mostly.
Yeah, it's not a real conversation.
No, it's not a real conversation.
No, it's not.
It's an advertisement.
It's a strategy.
Promoting something or not promoting something.
Yeah.
All right, but honey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do you want me to walk you out, Melora? Are you good?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
This has been a Gradients production.